Well, I guess it's afternoon, so good afternoon, and I want to thank everybody, you all particularly, for your participation, and I'm very excited about the group that we have here today. The group here, I think, shows that the EPA's overreach is not only affecting energy-producing states, but many other states as well. 32 states, to be precise, including West Virginia, have expressed concerns about EPA's intention to assert itself broadly into new regulatory arenas. And that's why we are joining together today, and at this point we have 26 co-sponsors to introduce the Affordable Reliable Energy Act now, known as ARENA. Everything has a name. This one's called ARENA. Our bipartisan legislation would empower the states to protect families and businesses from electricity rate increases, reduced electrical reliability, and other harmful effects of the President's Clean Power Plan. Our bill also would require any greenhouse gas standards set by the EPA for new coal-fired power plants are able to be achieved by commercial power plants operating in the real world. I believe Senator Manchin and Congressman Whitfield, I voted for their bill last year that is echoed in this bill. And that means that you would be looking at plants that actually have achievable and economically achievable technologies. I'm going to highlight 4 main areas of the legislation quickly, and then I want to let my colleagues address this issue that's very important to all of our states. First, for new power plants, the bill prevents the EPA from mandating the use of unproven technology. I addressed that just a little bit in the beginning. Second, for existing power plants, the bill extends compliance dates for the rule pending court rulings. We all know that the several issues, we just had a hearing in committee last week on the legalities around the Clean Power Plan and the regulation. This bill would forestall the enactment of these regulations until the courts make their decision. States do not have to begin implementing these costly and burdensome plans until a judicial decision is made. Third, the bill creates a state opt-out to protect ratepayers and electricity reliability. If a governor determines that a plan would negatively impact economic growth, affect the reliability of electricity grid, or increase electricity rates, states can opt out of this plan. Finally, if the EPA wants states to meet the required greenhouse gas emissions reductions, we feel that the EPA itself should put forth a model path for each state individually that shows how that state should achieve those objectives. The Affordable Reliable Energy Act now will be the principal legislative vehicle in the Senate to roll back the President's Clean Power Plan by ensuring reliable, affordable energy, putting jobs in our economy first, and curbing federal overreach. I am determined to move this legislation through the Senate, starting by working with Chairman Inhofe to move this through the APW committee, and then working with Leader McConnell to bring the bill to the floor. So I want to thank my colleagues here, and I'm going to first turn to Chairman Inhofe, and we're going to let you all introduce as the order goes. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds good. First of all, let me just applaud Senator Capito. The problems the American people don't know yet, and I think that we need to have you guys get a little more active in here to let people know really how punitive this is. The Clean Power Plan, you stop and think about it, the cost, and no one denies this. It would be around $479 billion. It will constitute arguably the largest tax increase in history. The idea of here we are in our committee right in the middle of putting together a very comprehensive long-term transportation reauthorization bill, and yet we have a program that would withhold highway funds, and of course the capital legislation would take care of that. And the fact that 43 states, including my state of Oklahoma, would have double-digit increases in the cost of energy. So I've never seen anything quite this universally opposed. We now have 32 states that have joined in opposition to it. We have 15 states that have lawsuits against this plan, and all of them, by the way, support this capital legislation. We have been very successful in having probably more hearings than any other committee has had. We've cranked out many bills, 4 just this last week, and they're very significant. This is going to go down as probably the most significant thing that we would do in the Environment and Public Works Committee this year. So I applaud you for getting in the front of this thing, Senator Capito, and we're going to make this a reality. Senator Blunt.
Well, thank you, Senator Inhofe, and thanks for making this a priority for your committee. All these regulations have a good name, and I'm always hesitant to refer to them by the great name they always have. The Clean Power Act. The power is a whole lot cleaner than it was a decade ago or a decade and a half ago. We're now at the point of, can we afford the next step in clean power? Senator Capito mentioned in her comments that this impacts non-energy producing states just like it produces energy producing states. We used to mine some coal in Missouri. We haven't mined coal in Missouri for about a decade now. So while I think the war on coal is a bad idea for the economy and a bad idea for the country, what specifically impacts me more where we live and people in our state is the war on coal-fired plants. These are plants that are in place, haven't been paid for yet, paid for over a reasonable period of time by the people who use the electricity. And if you don't get to pay for the plant, if you don't get to use the plant, somebody still has to pay for the plant. A plant that's much cleaner, much more efficient, much more environmentally friendly than it was a decade ago or 5 years ago. We've made great strides in this area, but we don't need to see our utility bills go up by double digits or even double in some cases for some individuals and in some states. The idea that that the EPA has to actually say you need to use technology that's available. The technology here for carbon sequestration is not available. I've asked EPA witnesses this same question: is this available? The best answer I ever got was, well, there are parts of it that might be available, and we feel like somebody should be able to figure out how to put them together and use them so that our prescribed alternative would work. So what would happen if the EPA got its way, in some cases, would be you'd be paying for the perfectly good current power plant that provides utilities to families all over your state. You'd then also be paying for the failure of the technology that's not available if you attempt to do that, and the EPA is wrong. There's a reason nobody's done this before and it doesn't work. And then you'd be paying for the third thing that you'd have to do to comply with this rule. This rule does not make sense. Nobody pays your utility bill but you. This rule has the biggest potential impact on poor families. Families that are most hurt by this rule are families that can barely pay their utility bill now. The EPA and the administration would like to convince people that somehow there's some big power company that's going to pay this bill. The power company is the rural electric co-op, the locally owned municipal power company, and even the heavily regulated power company that has to go to get a rate increase to the Public Service Commission in our state and other commissions in other states. The way these bills are paid is the cost of producing electricity is divided back only to the people who use that electricity. This will be hard for poor families. It'll be hard for young people because the jobs we will have if we have competitive utility bills that take advantage of the great American energy opportunities we have are not going to be there because they're going to go somewhere else. And they're going to go somewhere that cares a whole lot less about what comes out of the smokestack than we do. This is not a win-win. This is a lose-lose. The Capito bill tries to create an environment where we can actually figure out how this can be a winning combination for American families, not a losing combination. And Senator Manchin, the co-sponsor of this bill, is next.
Thank you, Roy. And let me just say it's a pleasure for me to be here with my colleague from my home state, Senator Shelley Capito, and also my colleagues in the Senate. These are things that we've been working on for quite some time, and we're dealing with the facts. The facts are that coal is going to be used to supply power to the United States for many, many years. If you're going to use it, you should use it as clean as possible. And all we've asked for is the federal government to be our partner and work with us. But when you continue to have onerous types of rules coming out that are unobtainable, then they're unreasonable. And that's all we've ever said. We've worked on the House with, as Shelley had said, with Ed Whitfield last year. Before the rules came out, rules are out now. We know where we have to make these adjustments so that we can give affordable, dependable, and reliable power to the United States of America and to our citizens. Our little state of West Virginia does everything it can for an all-in energy policy. We have wind, and we have solar, and we have hydro, and we have coal and gas. So we've been blessed, and we provide a lot of power for the rest of the country. We're a net exporter. About 70% of our power goes outside, and the rest probably right here depends on it, right on the East Coast here in D.C. So with that being said, all we're trying to do is something that's reasonable. This is a most reasonable piece of legislation. I applaud Senator Capito and her staff for working so diligently on this. It's something that's much needed to put some continuity to it. Right now, what's causing all of the uncertainty is basically the overreach of the EPA. It's just unbelievable. So you have people's not investing. You have reliability problems, and affordability problems is something we've talked about. So what we're trying to do is say, listen, let's make sure that we're involved. And 3 former governors here, the 10th Amendment's very near and dear to us. The states should be involved. They're on the front lines every day, have to answer to the constituents in our states, our respective states. So that's all we're asking for, is a reasonable approach. If technology, and we work together to form, to develop technology, and we have it under commercial load for 1 year, that's fine, then we should do it. If it works, and it's better than what we have. If we don't, then we should be developing it. And the federal government should be our partner and our ally, not our adversary. And that's all we've tried to say. So it's a shame that you need legislation to get the government to work with you. That's really what it is in a nutshell. It's a shame that it takes this legislation to ask our government to work with us to provide the best, most affordable, reliable, dependable, and cleanest power we possibly can. So with that, I'm proud to be part of this, proud to be a co-sponsor on this legislation, and we do intend to have it passed. With that, I'll bring on my dear friend, John Hoeven.
Thanks, Governor.
Former governor from North Dakota.
Thanks, Joe. I'm pleased to join with Senator Capito on this common sense legislation. That's what this is. This is common sense legislation. The CO2 rules that proposed by the EPA and the administration go around Congress. They go around Congress. And the problem is that they're going to raise costs on small businesses. They're going to raise costs on families. And ironically, the real key to getting more energy, more cost effectively, more dependably, and with better environmental stewardship is to encourage investment in the industry. Encourage the investment that will develop and deploy the new technologies that produce more energy and do it with better environmental stewardship. That's what we're doing in our state. That's what we're doing in North Dakota. Our companies have invested billions in new technologies. I'm sure they're doing the same in West Virginia, other places, South Dakota, Montana, across this country. The problem with the CO2 rules that the administration has proposed here and is working to implement is that they'll prevent that very investment because the power plants can't achieve the standards that they're putting in place. So instead of encouraging investment and deploying new technologies, they're preventing it. They're preventing the billions of dollars that are being invested to do exactly what we should be doing, which is produce more energy more affordably and with good stewardship. So instead of utilizing coal here, what's happening is it's going offshore and it's being burned in power plants that have lower environmental standards, not higher environmental standards. Now, we can't export our regulations, but we can export our technologies. So if we develop and deploy the new technologies here in this country, not only does that help us here at home, but other countries around the world will adopt those technologies as well. This week, the Department of Energy announced a $2.5 million grant to the state of North Dakota to work with the Energy and Environmental Research Center at the University of North Dakota to develop clean coal technologies. That's how you develop these technologies, and you get them to the point where they're cost effective so then you can deploy them. And the industry embraces that, and the industry is working with that, and that's how we move forward together. That's the right solution. And that's why the CO2 rules that the administration has put forward are a real problem. And that's why this legislation offered by Senator Capito is a common sense approach. Like Joe said, this is about getting the industry to work together with the Department of Energy on these new innovative technologies and build a better future. So let's take that course. Let's take that course where we work together and we empower the industry to innovate and do amazing things, rather than have a situation where these regulations are put forward that are going to absolutely stop investment in the power plant industry. I think I get to introduce another fellow governor. I think we're all governors together, and somebody that we all enjoy working with, and that's Senator Rounds from South Dakota.
South Dakota.
He wishes he was from North Dakota.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just share with you just the specifics. You've heard a lot of the concerns being expressed by everybody up here. I want to give you a specific on where in South Dakota the impact that this proposed rule right now would have on our state. We've got 820,000 people in the entire state. We have one coal-fired plant. If the laws were implemented the way that the EPA has proposed them today, we lose the plant because it would be able to operate less than 23% of the time. You can't operate a coal-fired plant 23% of the time. So we would basically lose the operation of the only coal plant that we have in the entire state of South Dakota. Now, we don't produce coal, we buy coal, and we need it because it's a firm source of power for us. The other sources that we use right now, we're a hydroelectric state. We've got 5 main stem dams along the Missouri River. It's clean technology. We utilize it today. I don't think we're going to be building any more dams on the Missouri River. And I think the same organizations that are suggesting we shut down our coal-fired plant are the same ones that would oppose us if we tried to create more hydroelectric power in our part of the country. So from our perspective, number one, we know we need electricity. We don't see other alternatives out there that are firm, that are available to us. It still does get cold in our part of the world. And you wake up and it's 20 below zero in South Dakota or in Minnesota or in North Dakota. You want to make sure you got the power. It gets cold, and consumers expect that you're going to have a firm source of power available to you. If this were to go into effect, it basically shuts down the only coal-fired plant we've got in the entire state. The other thing, just in terms of a consumer issue, we estimate right now, best estimate is that for the average American family, if these rules were to go into effect, and if they were not delayed, the average cost to the American family in the United States would be about $140 per month to their utility bills. So my compliments to Senator Capito. I think this is critical. Give us a chance to sit back and to actually ask for a little bit of that common sense to come back into the picture and support some legislation that's actually workable for the rest of the country. With that, I'd like to introduce another fellow senator that I had a chance to meet just in the last year, but Senator Steve Daines from our part of the country up in Montana.
And I'm not a former governor. When you think about Montana, you probably think about Yellowstone National Park, Glacier National Park, beautiful fly fishing streams. Brad Pitt filmed with Robert Redford, a river runs through it just about 40 minutes from where I grew up. But you also ought to remember that Montana is the number one, has more coal reserves than any other state in the Union. I had a field hearing on the Crow Reservation about a month ago about energy and about jobs. It was the first time we've had a U.S. Senate field hearing on the Crow Reservation discussing energy and jobs. Why did we have a field hearing there? Because to quote Chairman Darren Old Coyote of the Crow tribe, he said a war on coal is a war on the Crow people. Their unemployment rate on the Crow Reservation today is 47%. These regulations threaten their way of life as they mine coal there. Their unemployment rate will go north of 80%. And the path from poverty onto prosperity starts with a good, high-paying job. I stood with Boilermakers, the Boilermaker Union, the Pipe Fitter Union, the tribes of Montana, in ensuring that we stand for these jobs, because what it means with these good, high-paying jobs in Montana is not only a way of life for us that supports our schools, our teachers, our infrastructure, but it's also about low-cost energy. And I think it's so important if we look at the geopolitical challenges facing us around the world that we have more made-in-America energy and continue to incentivize truly a balanced portfolio that includes coal as part of that source.
Well, thank you all, and I would like to say a special thanks to my partner in West Virginia, Senator Joe Manchin. He's been fighting, and we've been working together very well on this. We hear a lot about partisanship and gridlock, and I think Senator Manchin and I have certainly on this issue are very much in tune with one another. So thank you for being here today and for lending your support. And we'll be leaning on you to get some of your.
Hard.
Here he comes. So anyway, with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions. Yes.
Hi, if states are allowed to opt out of a federal regulation, does that set a bad precedent? And secondly, doesn't this effectively kill any effort by the EPA to regulate carbon?
I think that states know best, and we have 3 governors here who have experience with this, how they can best handle certain situations. The way the Clean Power Plan is going forward, it's basically saying that the federal government's going to set a one-size-fits-all standard for every state. Well, we know in West Virginia that what our particular challenges are, and I think governors are very well equipped. They deal with these kinds of things every day. And so I think that, your opt-out reasons would be because your reliability of your grid, because of the excruciating economic problems for those, as Senator Blunt mentioned, at the lower end of the scale, where $140 extra a month is a crushing blow and impossible to afford. So I think it gives the states the voice that they need that they do not have in the plan presently.
If I can say
Yeah.
one thing towards that. The opt-out wouldn't be opted out if the federal government worked with us to develop the new technology. That's really what this does. We want to go to better standards. We'll go to higher standards. We've done supercritical. We've done ultra supercritical. We're doing it all and trying everything that we can. And all we're saying is if we're going to get to the next level, don't sit on the $8 billion that's been Department of Energy for the last 6 or more years. Let's start investing it and have some certainty to what we're going to do and move forward. So the only thing about from the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, it allows us to have some bit of sovereignty in our states to run them. And don't put me in a hardship to where I can't get it, and I want to be part. They've sure depended on West Virginia, and they've depended on South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, these little states, for over 100 years for the energy that's made the country what we are today. All we're saying is work with us. We'll get you to the next level. So I think that's what the legislation says. You want cleaner technology? Work with us.
As far as strategy goes, do you think this bill has a better chance, or in the past your party their party, Mr. Manchin, has been very good at using policy riders to take on the administration where you disagree with, say, the EPA?
Well, in my view, I think this is a comprehensive look. It's common sense. It has broad-based support. The reason the timing of this is because the regulation is going to come out in full force, we believe, sometime this summer, in June or July. So we're obviously trying to front run that. The courts are still dealing with this. In our committee, the testimony was such that the courts, for them to really reach finality on the legalities surrounding this particular environmental, what I would characterize as overreach, is another 3 or 4 years. So we think this makes a lot of sense, and we're going to push it forward through the committee.
Senator Manchin, on that point, how difficult is the challenge going to be on your side to prevent your side from stopping this procedure?
Well, it's a challenge, you know that, and I think that basically, we need 6 votes on our side, a minimum, if all the Republicans would support this piece of legislation, which I think they will, and I think we can do that, maybe even more. Remember this: the base of the Democratic Party, the support, which is all of our unions, our working people, working families, support this. We need them to get very active, and we will get them very active. on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, on that note, I would say we are going to have letters of support. I believe we already have
Mm-hmm.
one from the UMW and others, and we're collecting those as we.
Boilermakers, steel workers, you got
Right.
all of them are involved in this because it does make. We're not asking for something unreasonable. We're not saying, oh, we just put our head in the sand. We're just going to disregard this. Is not it at all. This is doable. They've changed their rules how many times? You think about that, and it's going back and forth. They're even kicking it around again. There's so much uncertainty. So this is going to put a little definition.
When we
to
had
it.
that hearing, that field hearing I mentioned, the witnesses were the chairman of the Crow tribe. We had the Montana Attorney General. We had a Boilermaker there. So, I mean, these are not what you would call traditional Republican constituent groups. These tend to be the groups that are usually associated with Joe's side of the aisle. And yet, this is where I think we're asking for balance and reasonable regulations here as we move forward here in continuing to develop clean energy.
Senator Manchin, have you talked with other Democratic colleagues who would typically, who oppose the rule like you do about why they aren't quite yet on board with this, at least in terms of co-sponsorship?
Well, I think a lot of times we put so much in co-sponsorships. You either co-sponsor means you're for or against. I think we've got Democrats that will vote for this piece of legislation. I'll be talking to them about co-sponsoring. The bottom line is that Senator Capito and I are from the same state. We have the same concerns, whether it be Democrat or Republican. We try to show the rest of the country you can work together in a bipartisan manner, and you should. And the bottom line is that we're going to move this forward, and I think you'll have some Democrats that either will co-sponsor but definitely will vote for it. And I think once we can work off the base, we can even get more support. That's what we're hoping for.
And this is a starting point. I mean, we've worked with certainly some other offices to try to, tell them about the bill, tell them exactly where it is. We're just starting now, and I think we will have some success, and we're positive about that.
Have you guys had
Go
any
ahead.
discussions with Murkowski about possibly putting it in the broad energy bill?
I'm going to say no, because I think this is going to go, we're going to take this into the EPW. I think that's the more appropriate committee. We had a hearing last week on the legality of the Clean Power Plan itself, where we had 2 attorneys general and some other expert witnesses on both sides talking about the Clean Air Act and how it's being utilized in this particular instance. So I think that's the appropriate place.
But Lisa's been very favorable, very, very supportive.
You talk about your willingness to move to the next level on technology, and somebody brought up the DOE loans.
Mm-hmm.
But why would companies invest in things like CCS if they're not required to, if there's no regulatory trigger requiring?
Why wouldn't the federal government? I mean, first of all, they dropped their plan on cogen. I mean,
Future Gen.
FutureGen. Okay, FutureGen. They moved it from carbon to oxy burn. Then they dropped the whole thing. Unless the federal government is sincere and earnest about investing and getting private-public partnerships with these, you're not going to develop that new technology. So you're saying no individual, no company can afford it. We've never done that. We don't do it with medicine. We don't do it with anything. The government has been a partner in working on all these new innovations and creations. And NETO, National Energy Technology Lab, for the scrubbers, low NOx boilers. That was all done through research and development with the federal government. Why all of a sudden now does it stop? Because they don't like coal? They've been using and depending on it for 100 years, but now they don't want to use it anymore. Even the Department of Energy says you're going to use it for at least 3 more decades.
Do you agree that you need some kind of a regulatory trigger to encourage the private sector also, in addition to the federal
Well, I would say that if you look at the plant in Mississippi that is doing CCS right now, and one of their stumbling points is the fact that what is it, $2 billion
Almost $3 billion
over cost. So the economics of it. But the other challenge has been once you capture the carbon, which they did a demonstration project in Mason County, West Virginia, which showed that with
Mountaineer
AEP,
Plan, the Mountaineer Plan,
where
that's
they said they can capture the carbon, but the problem is the sequestration portion. And so we're moving forward, I think, rapidly as we see a lot of the natural gas and oil development to use the carbon as a way to push more and get a cleaner drill and better productivity from their enhanced oil recovery, as it's
Let me
called.
give her the-
And so that's so those are the technologies, I think, that are right there that can be moved forward with the research dollars. And why wouldn't you want to move forward with that when you have affordable, available, lots of reserves in Montana and West Virginia,
And easy to get to.
and easy to get to, and it's domestic oil, it's domestic coal production that is the heart of it. So,
Let me give, and what Senator Capito and I are talking about, the Mountaineer plant is a perfect example. Carbon capture sequestration, Mountaineer plant. We had proven with the Mountaineer plant, and that was under AEP, American Electric Power, that they could do it commercially. That was the first proven.
with several hundred millions from the DOE.
Well, we had 150, 160 million from DOE. Now, guess what? I was governor at the time. They come to me and they try to get a rate increase for the ratepayers, the average citizens of West Virginia, to pay to show that it could be fully commercialized. 350. Guess where the Department of Energy put its money? Cylindra. So, that's a decision was made. We could have had carbon capture sequestration under commercial load if they'd have went ahead with that program, and they wouldn't do it.
You talk about states knowing best, governors knowing best, you don't want the federal government imposing a plan.
We have better performance than what the federal government has right now.
Yes, yes, and
I
yes.
think the EPA would say, yeah, exactly, we agree, and that's why we want states to write the plan. I mean, do you think that this idea of flexibility is just something you disagree with to begin with, or do you think that pick a
Oh,
path
boy.
to lower your carbon emissions altogether is something that's unreasonable?
Well, what I think is when they're telling a state like West Virginia, who's 95% reliant on coal for energy production, I heard Senator Rounds say that the one coal plant in South Dakota wouldn't meet the standard. I don't know how many coal plants we have in West Virginia, but none of them meet the standard right now. So you're talking 95% of your power is under a problem. So for the federal government to come in and say, okay, this is something that's going to work across the board. What I'm saying in this bill is, okay, EPA, if this is the standards that you're requiring and you want us to meet, you tell us how to meet it. You show the hardship, because I think it's sort of they're taking a back seat to the really tough decision, which is how is the state going to meet their individual standards? And so what I'm saying is, if this is the standards and we're required to meet them, as the federal government, you make an individualized plan for every state to meet so we can see what options they would put
Yeah,
forward.
we asked the EPA to come to that Senate field hearing on the Crow Reservation to stand in front of 200 people who showed up for that field hearing. They did not come to that hearing. They turned us down. We wanted them to come and stand in front of the people they would directly affect in terms of killing their jobs and raising their utility prices. At the end of the day, I mean, look at where it's a state like West Virginia, like Montana for the country. You look at your mobile device, it probably ought to have printed on it, this device most likely powered by coal. Because that's where we're at, and there's part of an education process here, and to make sure we keep a reasonable, balanced approach as we move forward here, and not repeat the mistakes we saw in Germany, where they suddenly shifted there from an all-of-the-above energy portfolio to one that eliminated nuclear, and now they're back to building coal plants. They're building coal plants in Japan. Let's make sure we're smart and reasoned as we go forward here.
Thank you all. Yeah, thanks a lot.
You bet, thank you.